With Bitcoin rallying hard to the upside, many traders are wondering if now is the time to start rotating into altcoins. So is sticking with BTC currently the best thing, or should we be looking at other crypto assets? Today we're going to be looking at whether now is the time to start considering altcoins for your investing. And as we can see right now, Bitcoin has had a very good last few weeks, well, week here specifically, but overall it's been a very bullish period for BTC, briefly surpassing $50,000 and now just hovering slightly below this level. And if we just scroll down here, we can actually see that the market is becoming quite greedy. We're actually seeing an overly extremely greedy sentiment amongst crypto investors, mainly just due to this positive price action. But along with this greedy price action, we actually tend to see a little bit of excessive greed towards other digital assets. One of the key components for this fear and greed index, if we just scroll down a little bit here, we can actually see that it's looking at the dominance of Bitcoin relative to other cryptocurrencies. So what we can actually see is one, Bitcoin is rallying hard to the upside and we're getting especially greedy, but then we're also starting to see capital shift from Bitcoin into other crypto assets, other altcoins, NFTs, whatever people are looking at. We can actually see that this is typically aligning with a very greedy sentiment. So maybe as we're seeing extreme greed in the market here, actually one of the highest greed factors we've seen since Bitcoin's previous all-time high at near $70,000, maybe now people are looking at these other altcoins. But if we scroll down a little bit here, we can actually see on this look into Bitcoin page that Ethereum versus Bitcoin, if we just look at the 1 month performance here, so this is Ethereum priced in Bitcoin, currently sitting at around 0.05 BTC per 1 ETH, is actually down nearly 11%. If we just go to the chart here, what I've loaded up is the BTC dominance chart here on TradingView. So this green line is representing in percentage terms the amount of the total crypto market cap that is made up of solely Bitcoin. So we can see right now it's currently at around 54%. So if the entire multi-trillion-dollar crypto market industry, over 50% of that is made up just of Bitcoin's market cap. But we can see this is a very cyclical metric. And we can see in the previous cycle, it rallied from around 36, it nearly doubled from that percentage up to around 72%. This means that maybe other altcoins, other digital assets were increasing in their USD valuation, but in comparison to Bitcoin, we're actually massively underperforming. Bitcoin's upside gains were far outpacing almost the entire industry. And if I just load up the Bitcoin price action here, it may become a little bit more apparent. So the Bitcoin price action is just this orange line we see here. And as we said, as Bitcoin rallied in the last stages of the bull cycle, dominance actually increased. In fact, if I just remove my head a little bit, it might be a bit easier to see. There we go. So as Bitcoin rallied in the latter stages of the previous bull cycle, we can see that Bitcoin dominance actually increased from around 50% all the way up to, again, this 72%-ish figure. And it actually only started rapidly decreasing after Bitcoin's price action had topped out. And then it actually took about a month for Bitcoin dominance to really drop to that cycle low down here around 36%. But then as Bitcoin decreased in value, we had this long extending bear cycle, and then we bottomed here around $3,000 or so. Dominance just continued to climb during this bear cycle, but then even more so as Bitcoin started to rally initially in the next stages of the bull cycle. So we can see here in early to mid 2019, after Bitcoin had bottomed, dominance actually rallied from around 50% once again up to this 70+% figure. And there was a bit of sideways consolidationary period here, but we saw a similar bit of price action here, where in the latter stages of the Bitcoin bull cycle, as we rallied from around $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 to above $40,000 initially, Bitcoin dominance actually again increased by about 15%, which is an absolutely massive increase considering the scale of increase of the total crypto market cap at the time, just really indicating the underperformance of altcoins compared to Bitcoin. Now, once again, once Bitcoin had had this kind of initial exuberant rally to the upside, we saw a bit of a decrease in the Bitcoin dominance as a lot of altcoins started to increase in their valuations, as capital started to rotate and flow into smaller and smaller market cap projects. And then again, as Bitcoin rallied a bit higher, we saw some consolidation before a real altcoin season, altcoins rallying massively to the upside, and Bitcoin kind of stayed a little bit stagnant as we reached this first all-time high. But we can see a very similar story. After this consolidationary choppy intra-cycle swings we saw in the dominance, if we just hide this price action here, we can see that Bitcoin dominance has increased from the lows at around 38-39% up to this 54% figure we're currently at now. But again, if we just look at the Bitcoin price action over that time, it lines up pretty much perfectly with Bitcoin bottoming in price action. So even though we're seeing crypto assets, digital assets increase massively in their valuations, a vast majority of this huge increase to the total crypto market cap is made up of Bitcoin, and this value is just continuing to increase. So if we just zoom out a little bit here and actually convert this back into a candlestick chart here, and in fact, if we just go into the weekly time frame, it might be a little bit more obvious to see. What we can see here is Bitcoin's dominance increasing like we saw in this cycle up to around 54%. And really, it doesn't look like it has any indication of this slowing down. I know there'll be a few days, weeks, maybe even a couple months where this maybe trends a little bit to the downside and we see altcoins maybe outperform on a short-term basis. But overall, I think until we climb a little bit higher, now definitely isn't the time to be rotating a large portion of your capital into any altcoins or any other digital assets. I think really until we maybe reach this region up here, which has been a key turning point for Bitcoin dominance over the past few cycles, acting a couple times as resistance as we came back, support, broke beneath, and then we consolidated beneath this line for a few months before breaking above and again acting as support. So I think this level here is a very key level that we need to be watching in this Bitcoin dominance metric up to around maybe this region here. So I think around 58 to 60% on this Bitcoin dominance metric is really where we need to be watching Bitcoin's price action coming up towards, maybe finding resistance before convincingly dipping beneath this region before we could really even start considering any altcoins. Like we could see from the Fear and Greed Index, maybe getting a little bit overheated in terms of market bullish sentiment, maybe indicating that there's potentially a little bit of a pullback due, but either way, it's indicating that maybe people are looking towards altcoins. But all of the data, looking at the ETH BTC ratio, looking at the Bitcoin dominance, and looking at the historical trends of dominance and the Bitcoin market cap increase in relation to the total crypto market cap, really there doesn't seem to be any evidence to suggest now that the optimal play is to be in altcoins. It seems like you'd be throwing your money away, potentially just gambling your hard-earned and hard-invested Bitcoin into these projects that are likely going to underperform for the foreseeable future. So when could we potentially expect to see Bitcoin rally to this 58 to 60% region and have this mini alt season that many are maybe anticipating we'll see sooner rather than later? Well, if we look at the previous cycle from when we bottomed to where we peaked, it's around 1,080 days from the cycle low to the cycle peak in this Bitcoin dominance metric. So probably around 3 years time. And if we just look at where we bottomed out here to where we currently are, this is actually around 540 days. So maybe we're only halfway of Bitcoin's dominance increasing. Maybe there's another year and a half or so before we actually see this Bitcoin dominance metric massively decrease, indicating that altcoins are going to start massively outperforming BTC. So again, we've got quite a bit of room to the upside for Bitcoin dominance to increase before there's any key areas of potential resistance for this metric. And looking at previous cycles, it's looking like it's not going to reach there anytime soon, and we're likely going to see this metric continue to grind up as Bitcoin continues to outperform. Also, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. And make sure to check out all the resources we've discussed today, as well as the many more that are all available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. So just to summarize, with Bitcoin seeing large upside gains and surpassing the key $50,000 level, many traders are wondering if now is the time to start rotating into altcoins. And as market participants are becoming more and more potentially overly bullish, we see metrics like the Fear and Greed Index representing an extremely greedy market sentiment as they look to squeeze out as much profit as possible. And like we've discussed in this video and in previous videos, as we see capital rotate into Bitcoin, slowly into larger market cap altcoins, into smaller and smaller and smaller, more speculative digital assets, we see this cycle of greed really start to take over the crypto market industry. Although we do need to take into account that Bitcoin typically outperforms for a vast majority of bull cycles. We can see on a potentially 3.5 to 4 year cycle basis that we've historically seen, Bitcoin dominance increases for 3+ years of that. And with only around 500 or 600 or so days into this current cycle of Bitcoin dominance increasing, meaning we probably have a substantial amount of room to grow to the upside over a substantial period of time. And like we said, we saw from the ETH BTC underperformance over the recent history, even though Bitcoin and other crypto assets are trending into the upside on US dollar terms, most crypto assets, most digital assets are still underperforming BTC in their upside gains. So especially when we consider the BTC halving coming up in just a few weeks' time, the incoming ETF inflows of institutional capital now really isn't the time to be gambling away your hard-earned capital with these risky crypto plays. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to professional resolution charts, advanced macro and portfolio data tools, in-depth crypto industry reports, live and personalized indicator alerts, private TradingView scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know what your thoughts are on potentially rotating into other digital assets or cryptocurrencies. Do you think now is the time to start maybe accumulating small portions of them? Or do you maybe agree with me and think that Bitcoin is going to continue to outperform, especially with the external catalyst that we're seeing in the near term? Continue to outperform massively, at least for a little while longer, and we should maybe wait before we try and gamble on these riskier plays. As I said, let me know down in the comments below and on social media. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.